like let's say it's alcohol, that's more socially acceptable,
Mm,
or let's say it's medication
mm,
or gambling.
mm.
They might not see it as an issue in the beginning,
Sure.
but normally what goes under the radar is that progressive destructive
Mm,
nature that addiction has.
sure.
So for if you have a spouse, you guys have to obviously be observing one. Like if let's say if you guys drink,
Yeah.
then you have to look at what happens around that, right?
Mm,
Because we normally say that it's an addiction is when it's beginning to now affect areas of your life negatively,
sure.
right? So if it's affecting your daily life, if it's affecting how you take care of your
Mm,
responsibilities, if it's affecting how you do relationships,
mm,
and then it's becoming a problem,
mm,
right?
mm,
So there's a lot of things that can characterize it. So let's say, for instance, if the person now starts having these uncontrollable, I'd say, urges or
mhm.
constant urges for whatever substance that may be,
Sure.
that's a red flag,
Sure.
right? If there is now a preoccupation
Mm,
or obsession now with that substance of choice or that behavior of choice,
mm,
that could be an issue. Let's say somebody, you have a spouse who's like gambling, they're watching those horses around on
mm,
DSTV. I don't know
mm,
what
mm.
channel that is, and now the horses is on every time. Now nobody can watch Spongile and the Dlaminis or whatever, So just to throw another joke there. But you if you see it
Yeah.
happening more frequently,
Sure.
and there's now excess there,
Mm,
like it's becoming more excessive, then that
sure.
could be a sign.
Mm,
Then for the person who's in it, if it's accompanied by guilt and shame, secretive
mm,
behavior,
mm,
rebelliousness, where you just, or, justifying
mm,
why you're doing it,
mm,
or minimizing it. It's not that bad,
mm.
but everybody else can see that it's bad. People have even come to you and say, hey, or
Yeah.
even your spouse can see. And your spouse is normally the one that notices it
Sure.
first
Sure.
because they know you better. I mean, they see us like we
Yeah.
expose, like your
Yeah.
spouse can expose you.
Yeah. Easy. Easy.
They know you better than anyone. So there will be these many red
Sure.
flags that will begin to show up. So from the
Mm,
craving and urges, the
sure.
obsession, tolerance is a common one,
Mm,
where the person now begins to use more and more of whatever it is to
mm.
get the same feeling and effect, right? Or they try to cut down or try to stop on their own, and they
Mm,
fail numerous times.
mm.
Or there's just all kinds of negative things:
Sure.
conflict with family, conflict at work, conflict with the law.
Mm,
You understand?
mm.
So there's so many red flags that you need to look out for, and if you can
Sure.
spot those things early on,
Mm,
then you can nip it at the bud
mm.
before it gets out of control. That's why we have to be open and vulnerable in our relationships,
Sure.
and there has to be some transparency. But addiction is the secretive thing
Yeah. Yeah.
that you normally try and hide from your family. So some people only see the signs later on.
Mm, mm,
So he
mm, mm,
was a
mm,
casual drinker,
mm.
and then it kind of escalated from there.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
sometimes very difficult for a spouse
Mm,
because they sometimes don't know what to
mm, mm,
do
mm.
in that
Sure.
situation, because now they're noticing things
Yeah.
like now it's money that was supposed to be used for this is not there because
Sure.
hubby's gambling now, and now gambling is like probably like now the new face
Yeah.
into when it comes to the behavior addictions other
Yeah.
than pornography.
Yeah. Because
And
it's easily accessible.
exactly,
Yeah. Sure.
24/7. I
Sure.
mean, last year the stats say that people spend like 1.1 trillion rand
No
just on
way.
gambling, and
Gambling. No way.
yes,
Way.
that's
Trillion.
40% higher than
Trillion, bro.
2023.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
1.1 trillion,
That's
according to the stats. I get it. They
crazy,
can
bro.
see this stuff because there's databases. People are
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
logging into
Yeah.
their profiles. They can
Sure.
use the data there and say, okay, this is how much people have
It's
spent. And the main
crazy,
reason is obviously uh, people look at it
bro.
as a way to deal with
Yeah.
financial issues, like this is a quick way to make, and then they get into that hole,
Sure.
and it's very, you understand.
Sure.
So I believe, as a husband or wife,
Mm.
you have to observe those things,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, is okay, so my hubby drinks, if when he drinks, what do I
Mm.
exhibit? Or my wife, he drinks, when she
Sure.
does,
Sure.
what am I seeing?
Sure.
You understand?
Sure.
Is it controlled? Is it being done responsibly? And
Mm.
what does the responsibly even mean? Does it mean that she drinks to get a little drunk, or is it just a
Mm.
drink every
Mm.
now and again?
Mm.
Is there a pattern? You understand?
Sure.
So there's a lot that you need to look out for, because
Mm.
it's
Mm.
very
Mm. Mm.
subtle.
Yeah.
It's very subtle. But I've
Mm.
seen with most people, it normally gets into excess when You know, there's trauma dynamics. Maybe
Yeah.
they're going through some
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
You know, grief. Grief is a common one.
Yeah.
Right? We use after tears. After tears is
After
like
tears, yeah.
the way that's where it starts for most people. So there's a lot of signs that we
Sure.
can look out for.
Yeah.
And you kind of see it you kind of see it build up and then
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
evolve from there.
Who gets caught up more, men or women?
Men.
Okay.
We more risk takers.
Sure. Yes.
We papa a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Our risk appetite is higher, man.
It does happen with women, but
Yeah.
you know, even if you go to any facility, you'll always find more men
Sure.
than women. Right?
How would you help their wives broach the subject? So now they've seen these red flags, they've seen these signs. How can a wife approach? Because obviously it's going to
Yes.
be an area that's sensitive. He's most likely going to be defensive.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Right.
Always.
And then the worst case scenario is obviously some form of retaliation, you know, so physical retaliation or verbal abuse or whatever the case is. Yeah. Or he starts withholding money. So maybe the wife is very scared to broach the subject because she's like, man, there's going to be consequences here. How can you help her? What should she be saying? How can she approach the conversation?
Yeah, let's say the wife has already done everything
Yeah.
to approach the situation. She's responded in love. She's communicated concern. Hey, love, I see that.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously you don't want it to be an argument when you are approaching somebody with that.
Sure.
Who may have a problem, right?
Sure.
You know, so your approach is very important. But there is going to be.
Why is it important?
Because what you want to communicate is love and support and not necessarily judgment or you understand.
Yeah.
You don't want it's not a confrontation.
Sure.
So they call it a courageous conversation.
Sure.
We're gonna have, you know, it's conflict. Like when you have conflict, you have to have a courageous, like you have to step up and say, hey, this is the problem. This is what I'm noticing. This is what I'm seeing. This is how it's affecting us, you know. So having those courageous conversations can be very intimidating because you know, you never know how your partner's going to react. They will obviously get defensive. That's the first thing most people do. But many a times they will have heard what you said, and what they do with that is very important. So if you've done all of those things, you've communicated support and love, you've tried to listen, what's the story? Why is this happening? You know, if you try to get the answers and nothing's happening, then you have to involve other people, whether it be family members, you know, somebody normally that they'll respect. If that doesn't work, then you can also involve, like, you know, a professional now. You know, in the situation. So the challenge is that most people wait for a crisis event. You know, most people wait until something bad really has to happen before. Like even with myself, something bad had to happen again. Because there's when there's a crisis event, one crisis event upon crisis event. You're like,
and
okay,
then the
like
final one.
You know, so something has to happen, and it doesn't always have to be that way. You know, we can. So it will also depend on your partner. And where they are, their state of mind. Are they humble enough to say, okay, babe, this is an issue. I will seek help. I will be intentional. You know what I'm saying? And then you can be there for them as a means of support. Because now what we even do is we don't just provide therapy for the person that's going through it, but also for the spouse or the family, because they've also been traumatized in some sense. You understand it? Normally they go through what the person in active addiction is going through. Right? It's destructive. It doesn't only affect the person that's doing it, but it affects.
And that's why I wanted us to kind of double tap on the approach, because as the spouse, you know, I'm seeing my wife go through this addiction. I'm seeing the signs. I'm approaching her. The reason why I wanted us to kind of emphasize why it's important to approach them with care is because in the moment I'm angry.
Yes.
I can see that you're destroying your life. I can see that this thing is affecting us. And so it's also hard for me, understandably so. It's hard for me to just go with a very, you know, calm, loving approach. But I'm angry and I'm trying to pull you out of that.
The fire.
And you know what? I'm trying to pull you out of the fire. Like it's hard to say to somebody who's burning, hey, don't you think you're burning?
Yeah.
You know? But in this instance, you kind of have to, because if you're dragging them out of the thing, then they kick into well, like they become defensive, you know? How could you talk to me like this? You don't understand what I'm going through, blah, 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 you know what I mean? So that's why I was like, man, the approach is...
So the confrontational approach doesn't work at all. Even if I think about how my family approached me, there were moments, there are going to be moments of
where you
tough
have
love,
to. Yeah, sure.
you know, but many of the times it was always from a place of love.
Yeah.
So I always knew like they care. That's why they're not policing me or trying to control me or tell me what to do. They actually sincerely care. And that's what you want the person to know. But at the end of the day, this is the sad reality. You can't make the decision for them. You understand?
Yeah.
They also have to want...
Can you speak to them now about that? Like, so the guy who's struggling with addiction, the wife who's struggling with addiction. Yeah.
So here's the reality. You also have to want it. If you don't want it as much as they want it for you, at least a little, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to stay in recovery. So there must be some desire, at least, for change and some willingness to do whatever it will take. So for instance, with myself, I went to rehab more than once, not because there was something wrong with the facility. I'm not saying that there are some wild facilities out there. So please be careful in how you choose your, treatment facilities. But I was doing it because people wanted me to do it. And I wasn't, my wife wants me. I'm here because my wife. Okay, that's good. But it's not good enough. Do you want to be here?
Yeah.
Do you want to change? Not only for their sake, but for your own sake as well. So how bad do you specifically want this? You understand? So I had to get to that place where I wanted it. I went to my family. I went to them and said, okay, guys, I want it now. I'm going to do whatever. You understand? I was desperate. So sometimes people have to get to that place of desperation because there's a lot on the line. Now when you're married, like it's even more complicated. Remember, I wasn't even married when I was in it. You understand? Imagine if I was, the trauma, like you know what I'm saying? So now there's a lot more on the line, but it first has to come from that,
from you, man,
from that person. So that's why the approach is so important, because we also want to encourage them and motivate them to say, hey, look, help is available, because they're suffering. Addiction starts in pain.
It's crazy,
people
bro.
are drinking to medicate, bro. People it's escapism. Right? That's what it becomes. It doesn't always start that way. And the sad reality is that it's not a choice. It's an unintended consequence. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be an alcoholic. No, nobody does that. No, it's an unintended consequence in most cases. So that's why we don't look at it as a moral failing in that regard. But it's also now considered to be a medical condition, like a health issue, like how depression or anxiety, So for that person, there's a lot underneath. The addiction is just a symptom of what's happening. Down there.
That's where the conversation is meant to be.
Exactly. And that's where, therapy comes in, pastoral care comes, you understand? So that we can, treat the root of what is causing this. So you have to want it. And, once you want it, then your family, so your spouse, your children, and then they can also be extra motivation. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to better their lives as well.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. There's more in that conversation. If you want to check out the full episode, click on the video right now or the link in the description box.